Welcome back to our reading through the scriptures. And this week you're going to be reading Ezra chapter 6 through Nehemiah chapter 11. And again, I hope these introductions have the context of what's happening is helping you. So let's pick it up with Ezra chapter 6. Now, with the return of Ezra, we have a smaller return under Ezra. It takes place around 457 BC. Now, that's 81 years after the first return under Zerubbabel. Remember, Zerubbabel brought him back to rebuild the temple. Ezra comes back to reform the people's spiritual life. But that's like 81 years later. Now, Ezra the Priest is given authority by Artaxerxes I to bring the people's contribution. A lot of folks back in Babylon, Jews, they would give money and treasures to support the temple, but they weren't going to return. So there's only about 2,000 of them that will make that trip from Babylon back to Jerusalem. But God makes sure they return, even with all this wealth, unharmed, and he protects them. Well, God uses Ezra to rebuild the faith of the people, and he addresses the marriage to foreign women. He identifies the people's sin. He offers intercessory prayer. He just becomes a real pastor, a real peace to the people. Well, now there's a gap of 58 years between Ezra chapter 6 and Ezra chapter 7. And during these 58 years, the people fall into confusion spiritually. And Ezra is alarmed, and that's why he comes to straighten it out. So the people make a confession, response to the word of God, and it brings great revival to the land. Well, now we come to the book of Nehemiah in our reading. Now, Nehemiah is a contemporary with Ezra. And Nehemiah was a cupbearer for the king of Persia. And Nehemiah will lead the third return to Jerusalem after, again, the Babylonian exile. Well, his concern is for the welfare of Jerusalem because the neighbors around Jerusalem, well, they become very hostile. They became enemies. So he is granted permission by the emperor to return to his homeland to rebuild the shattered walls of Jerusalem because the walls had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar at the attack at first. That left the city very vulnerable. You had to have a wall around it. So because of that, Nehemiah returns, and despite opposition, they would have half the people sit there building the walls and the other half with spears standing guard because there was constant attack by the enemies around who did not want the Jews to return to their promised land. The remarkable thing is God is in this whole thing because they complete the whole thing, even with all the opposition, in 52 days. 52 days. Well, you're going to find this is a great section of your reading. And again, you're going to find examples of how God is faithful to us when we're faithful to him. And you'll see his faithfulness in this. Great leadership book, the book of Nehemiah. We'll pick it up next week.